In North Korea, the concept of martial law is tightly intertwined with its totalitarian system and highly militarized governance. Though the country does not regularly announce martial law in the conventional sense, its government operates with military-style control over nearly all aspects of life. Here's an overview. 1. Definition and context. Martial law typically refers to the temporary imposition of military authority over civilian functions in response to emergencies like war, rebellion, or disaster. In North Korea, however, military authority is essentially permanent due to the regime structure. The country operates under the ideology of Sungun, military first, which prioritizes the military in governance, economy, and society. 2. Historical examples of martial law. Korean War, 1950 to 1953. During the war, North Korea was effectively under martial law as the military took control of civilian affairs. Internal purges and crackdowns, at times of perceived threats, such as during leadership transitions, e.g., after Kim Jong-il's death in 2011, the regime heightened military presence and imposed extraordinary control. 3. Current conditions. Militarized governance. The military's role in governance blurs the line between civilian and martial authority. With over 1.2 million active troops, the military significantly influences policymaking and enforcement. Constant surveillance. Citizens are subject to strict surveillance, with military and paramilitary forces controlling public behavior, border security, and internal dissent. Emergency decrees. During crises, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, the government has imposed heightened restrictions resembling martial law, with military involvement in enforcement. 4. Key characteristics of North Korean martial law. Authoritarian leadership. Kim Jong-un holds absolute power, supported by the military. Wartime mentality. The state perpetually prepares for war, using this as justification for strict military control. Lack of legal transparency. Decisions regarding martial or emergency measures are opaque, with no independent judiciary to challenge them. North Korea's governance under a highly militarized and authoritarian system effectively mirrors martial law without requiring formal declarations. Below is a detailed breakdown of how this control manifests and its implications. 1. Legal framework and the role of the military. Constitutional role of the military. The North Korean Constitution underscores the dominance of the Korean People's Army, KPA, as the defender of the state and the revolution. Under the Sungun, military first, policy, the military takes precedence in all state affairs. Supreme Commander's authority. Kim Jong-un, as the Supreme Commander of the KPA, wields absolute control over both the military and civilian spheres, blending military authority with governance. Emergency decrees. During crises, the state often enforces measures resembling martial law. For example, curfews, movement restrictions, and severe punishments for dissent are implemented under vague emergency laws. 2. Permanent features of militarized rule. Surveillance state. The regime maintains tight control through a network of state security agencies, informants, and the military. Citizens are constantly monitored, and dissent is punished with imprisonment or execution. Paramilitary organizations. Groups like the Worker Peasant Red Guards and the Red Youth Guard serve as extensions of military control over the population. Civil-military integration. Civilians are frequently mobilized for military-like duties, including infrastructure projects and agricultural campaigns. These efforts reinforce the state's control and instill discipline akin to martial law. 3. Historical examples of martial law-like measures. Korean War, 1950 to 1953. During the war, North Korea was under full military control. Civilians were conscripted en masse, and all resources were directed to the war effort. Strict curfews, censorship, and military tribunals replaced civilian law enforcement. Leadership transitions. After Kim Il-sung's death in 1994 and Kim Jong-il's death in 2011, heightened military presence and crackdowns on potential dissent were reported. COVID-19 pandemic. North Korea closed its borders entirely and imposed draconian restrictions enforced by the military. Violations of quarantine rules were reportedly met with severe punishment, including execution. Natural disasters and food crises. During famines, e.g., the Arduous March in the 1990s, the government deployed the military to suppress public unrest and ensure distribution control. 4. Key components of military rule. Border control. The military heavily patrols borders, particularly the Chinese border, to prevent defections. Those caught attempting to flee are executed or sent to labor camps. Military tribunals. Citizens accused of political crimes or insubordination are often tried by military courts with no transparency or right to appeal.
Curfews and checkpoints.
Military checkpoints exist across the country, restricting movement and ensuring compliance with state directives. Emergency resource allocation. The military controls distribution of food, fuel, and other scarce resources during emergencies, often prioritizing soldiers over civilians. 5. Impact on civilian life. Psychological control. Citizens are subjected to constant propaganda glorifying the military and the leadership, reinforcing obedience. Compulsory military service. North Koreans are required to serve in the military for extended periods, often 10 years for men and 7 years for women, blurring the line between civilian and military life. Punitive measures. The military plays a central role in enforcing punishments for anti-state activities, which can include failing to show proper respect for the Kim family or engaging in unauthorized travel. 6. Global and domestic implications. Nuclear program. The military's dominance underpins North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons, seen as vital for the regime's survival and leverage in international relations. Economic militarization. Resources are diverted to military projects, often at the expense of civilian needs, leading to widespread poverty and malnutrition. Suppression of dissent. Any perceived threat to the regime is met with a swift, militarized response, ensuring complete control over the population. 7. Recent developments. North Korea's response to the Ukraine war, U.S.-South Korea joint drills, and other geopolitical tensions demonstrates its readiness to impose further militarized control domestically to maintain stability. Reports suggest the regime is bolstering its internal security forces to preempt potential uprisings due to worsening economic conditions. Summary. North Korea operates as a permanent military state where the boundaries between civilian governance and martial law are indistinguishable. The government's reliance on the military to control all aspects of life reflects a system where martial law is effectively institutionalized, ensuring the regime's grip on power. This militarization has devastating effects on human rights, economic development, and the overall quality of life for its citizens. 5. Global implications. North Korea's de facto military rule underpins its nuclear ambitions and aggressive foreign policy. The lack of clear distinctions between military and civilian roles makes international engagement difficult.